Arab executive recognized a homeless African woman with a child. She was his childhood love, and he did this. He walked through the noise of the city with his usual confidence. Tailored white thobe, polished shoes, his phone buzzing with meetings and mergers. He was an Arab executive admired by many, feared by some, and known by all in the financial world. But that day, as he stepped out of his car and looked across the sidewalk, everything stopped. His past came rushing back to him in a single glance. There, sitting on the cold concrete, holding a small child close to her chest, was a woman in torn clothing, her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. Her face was thinner now, worn by time and struggle, but he knew it instantly. It was her, the girl from his childhood, the one who used to laugh barefoot in the fields, the only person who ever truly knew his heart, and the one he had lost without goodbye. She didn't see him at first. She was too focused on keeping her child warm, but he couldn't look away. And what he did next shocked everyone. He didn't walk past. He didn't send someone else. He crossed the street himself, knelt down beside her, and softly said her name. What happened after that moment changed not only her life, but his. Stay with us, because when you see what he says and what he chooses to do in front of the entire crowd, it will break your heart in the most beautiful way. Don't miss the ending. The streets of Casablanca buzzed with the usual chaos. Vendors shouting prices, cars honking in frustration, children weaving through alleyways. But none of that touched Amir. The world outside his car window was distant, like a memory he no longer belonged to. His black luxury sedan slowed near the central square, and as the door opened, a gust of dry wind tugged at his crisp white thobe. He stepped out, polished shoes landing on dusty pavement, briefcase in hand, sunglasses shielding eyes that had seen the world from boardrooms to balconies overlooking the Gulf. He wasn't supposed to be here. This detour was unplanned. But something pulled him, a quiet, unexplainable force that whispered of places he hadn't walked in decades. He passed familiar corners without letting them register. A small cafe, where he once stole glances at the girl with braids. A mural faded by sun and time. But he didn't see any of it. Not until he turned down a narrow sidewalk, shadowed by old stone buildings, and his gaze dropped and locked. A woman sat on the ground, hunched and still, a child in her lap. Her skin was deep and warm, like the earth. Her clothes were torn, dusty, stitched over and over. She held the child tightly, as if the world might take him away if she loosened her grip. And her eyes, they were tired, yes, but underneath that, they held a fire he hadn't seen in years. Amir froze. The world tilted for a moment. The sound around him dissolved. Time shrunk. It was her. He hadn't said her name in 20 years. He had buried it somewhere no one could reach, not even himself. And yet, here she was, Amina, the only girl who ever truly knew him before the suits, before the oil money, before the empire. He removed his sunglasses slowly. His breath trembled. His voice caught in his throat. His heart, it hadn't beaten like that in years. Amina hadn't seen him. Her head was bowed, her hands gently stroking the child's curly hair. She looked thinner, smaller somehow, but still her. The curve of her jaw, the quiet dignity in her posture, even sitting on the sidewalk like a shadow among the moving crowd. He took a step forward, then another. Someone brushed past him, muttering in Arabic. A delivery man swerved to avoid him. But Amir didn't care. He was crossing an invisible line, from power to past, from distance to something fragile and real. When he stood in front of her, she still didn't look up. It wasn't until he said her name, softly, brokenly, that her body stiffened. Amina. Her head rose slowly. Her eyes found his. For a second, she didn't recognize him. Of course she didn't. The man in front of her was not the boy who once swore he'd return. He had disappeared, left without a word, let war, wealth, and silence bury what they had. But then, her lips parted. "Amir," she said, her voice like dust and wind and memory. He knelt, right there in the middle of the street. His knees hit the ground without hesitation, white robes folding beneath him. The crowd moved around them like water, but no one existed in his world anymore, except the woman and the child in her lap. She looked at him with disbelief, with pain, with everything she had ever wanted to say, and never had the chance. He looked at the child, then at her. "You have a son?" he whispered. Amina clutched the boy tighter, as if to protect him from this ghost from her past. And Amir. Amir reached out his hand, trembling, eyes glassy. "Is he—" Her silence was louder than any answer. And in that moment, everything Amir had ever built, all the walls, the wealth, the reasons, cracked. He hadn't just found her. He had found them. The world didn't move for a while. The boy, no older than 4, stirred in his mother's lap, unaware of the storm swirling in the eyes above him. His tiny fingers clutched a scrap of fabric, the edge of his mother's worn shawl, while his cheek rested on her arm. His breathing was calm, peaceful. He didn't know that the man kneeling in front of him was the reason his mother cried silently at night, whispering to memories that never answered back. Amir's voice cracked again, softer this time. "Is he mine?" Amina didn't answer right away. Her gaze flicked toward the child, then back to Amir. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Instead, her eyes told the truth. The pain in them, the hesitation, the weight of years. She didn't need to say yes. He already knew. The boy looked just like her, the same warm skin, the same soft curls. But his eyes, those were Amir's, that unmistakable shade of steel gray blue, the eyes of a man who had spent years hiding in boardrooms and behind luxury, and now faced the one truth he had run from. Amir looked down. His hand hovered in the air, then slowly, almost reverently, reached for the child's. He didn't touch him. He couldn't. Not yet. "I thought you left," she finally said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it was sharp, like a cracked mirror. "I did," Amir replied. "My father took me away the week after. I never had a chance to say goodbye. I didn't know." "You didn't look," she said. Those 3 words cut deeper than any scream ever could. He blinked, and his shoulders dropped, heavy under the weight of guilt. "I searched," he said quietly. "Years later, when I had the power to move. But by then, you were gone." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at her son and kissed the top of his head. A mother's silent apology for everything he had missed, and everything she had endured. The silence between them was not empty. It was full. Of what could have been. Of what still might be. Amir stood slowly, brushing dust from his robes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. Black, minimal, with only his name embossed in silver. Amir el-Hakim. He crouched slightly and gently laid the card on the pavement beside her. "You don't have to trust me," he said, "but let me help." Amina narrowed her eyes. "Help?" "Yes, a hotel, food, clothes, a doctor for him." He gestured gently toward the boy. "A chance to sleep in a real bed, Amina." "I've slept on stone and stayed alive," she answered. "We're not charity." He didn't flinch at her pride. He had loved that fire once. He still did. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's debt. One I owe you." She looked at the card, then back at him. "And after the hotel, you disappear again?" "No," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving. Not this time." The boy stirred again and opened his eyes. Sleepy, wide, curious. He looked up at Amir. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. But something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Instinct. Or just the strange, silent bond between a father and a son who had never met, but somehow knew. Amina shifted, wrapping the shawl around the boy and standing slowly. She kept her body between the child and Amir, protective and calm. "If we go with you," she said, "we go as we are. No pretending, no press, no cameras. You don't parade us through lobbies." "I promise," Amir said. "And if he asks who you are," she added, her voice shaking slightly. Amir looked down at the boy again, then met Amina's eyes. "I'll tell him," he said. I'm the man who should have been there all along." Amina stared at him for another long moment. Then she took the card from the ground. Not acceptance, but maybe the beginning. "Come back here at sundown," she said. "We'll decide then." And with that, she turned away, disappearing into the crowd with her son in her arms, leaving Amir standing in the middle of the street, heart pounding louder than the city ever could. The city was quieter by the time the sun began its descent. Shadows stretched across the sidewalks, and the heat of the day gave way to a gentler, golden glow. Amir stood by the same corner, this time without his driver, without his phone, without anything but his breath and the wild storm inside him. He hadn't been this nervous in decades. Men like him didn't wait on street corners. They were waited for, summoned, surrounded by staff, by press, by power. But now, dressed in the same white thobe, but no longer crisp, slightly wrinkled from hours of stillness, Amir looked like a man returning to something more honest, maybe for the first time. Every passing moment tested him. What if she didn't come? What if she changed her mind? What if she never forgave him? But as the last light of day slid across the cracked pavement, a small figure turned the corner. She walked slowly, one hand holding her son's, the other wrapped in her shawl. Amina's face was the same, tired but proud, cautious but firm. The child looked up at her, then toward Amir, his small feet hesitant but curious. Amir took one breath, deep, anchoring, and stepped forward. "I didn't think you'd come," he said softly. "I almost didn't," she replied, her tone honest. But he was hungry and curious. She looked down at her son and gave him a gentle nudge forward. The boy approached Amir slowly. He didn't speak. He just looked up at him, tilting his head like he was trying to solve a puzzle only his heart could understand. Amir knelt down again. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy blinked once, then looked back at Amina, who nodded. "Zaid," the boy said quietly. Amir's throat tightened. He had no right to feel proud, but the name struck him like a secret whispered from the past. "Zaid," Amir repeated with a faint smile. "That's a strong name." The boy didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. That was something. Amina stepped closer. "If we go with you, Amir, it's temporary. You help us get back on our feet, then we move on. I'm not raising my son in your world of cameras and gold walls." "You won't have to," Amir said. "I don't live in that world anymore." She raised an eyebrow. "I stepped away months ago," he admitted. "Stepped down from the board. Sold my holdings. I was tired of building a life I didn't recognize." Amina looked at him, surprised for the first time. "And now?" He looked at her. Really looked at her. "Now, I want to build something real." Silence. The kind that carried weight. Then, gently, Amina nodded. "We'll come. Just for the night." That night, Amir took them to a modest hotel. Not the one he owned. Not the kind with chandeliers or personal butlers. Just a quiet place with clean sheets, warm food, and a bed where a child could sleep without sirens outside the window. Amina didn't speak much during dinner. She watched Zaid eat, cutting his food with practiced hands, making sure he drank enough water, her eyes flicking toward the door now and then, still ready to run. Amir noticed everything, how her shoulders never fully relaxed, how she always kept herself between Zaid and any stranger, how she folded her napkin 3 times without realizing. He didn't press her. He just sat across from them, eating slowly, answering Zaid's questions with care. About the city, about the stars, about the scarf on his head. That night, before they went to their room, Amir stood in the hallway and looked at Amina one last time. "I don't expect anything," he said. "But I will be here, every day if I have to. I'll wait as long as you need." She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes weren't soft, but they weren't closed either. "You can see him tomorrow," she said. "Not because of you, but because of him." And then she walked away, her hand gently resting on her son's back as they disappeared into the hotel room. Amir stayed there, standing in the hallway, heart full of something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The next morning, Amir stood outside the hotel room holding 2 paper cups of warm tea. He hadn't slept. The thought of Zaid's small face, of Amina's guarded eyes, of everything he had missed. It all ran in a loop through his mind, sharper than any boardroom crisis or contract negotiation ever had. He raised his hand to knock, hesitated, then did. A pause. Then the door opened a crack. Amina's eyes appeared first. No makeup, no expression. Just the same quiet shield that had protected her all these years. She looked at him, then at the cups. "Tea," Amir said simply. "Mint." She opened the door wider. Inside, Zaid was sitting cross-legged on the bed, still in pajamas that were just a little too small, his hair a mess of soft curls. He looked up and gave a tiny wave. "Hi," he said. Amir smiled, heart clenching. "Hi." Amina let Amir step inside, but she stayed near the door, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "I brought breakfast," he added, nodding toward a paper bag. "From the cafe downstairs. I wasn't sure what he'd eat." Zaid scooted closer to the edge of the bed and peeked inside the bag. His face lit up. "Croissants?" "And honey," Amir said. "The good kind." Zaid dug in without hesitation, and for a moment, the room filled with the sound of soft chewing and crinkling paper. Amir sat on the edge of a chair, sipping his tea. Amina stayed standing, her back never quite resting against the wall. "You can sit," Amir offered. "I'm fine," she said. I know, he replied gently. You've always been fine, even when you shouldn't have had to be. Her expression shifted, not softer, but less armored. Zaid looked up between bites. Mama says you used to be friends. Amir nodded. We were. She said you went away. I did. Why? Amina was about to interrupt, but Amir held up a hand. He looked directly at Zaid. Because I was young and didn't understand what I was losing, he said honestly. And by the time I did, I didn't know how to find her. Zaid blinked, then shrugged. You found her now? Amir smiled. I did. The boy returned to his croissant like the moment meant little. But for Amir and Amina, it cracked something open. A window, a space, something unsaid that was finally breathing. After breakfast, Amir offered to take Zaid out for a walk, just around the block, to let him stretch his legs. Amina hesitated, then agreed, on one condition. I come too, she said. He nodded. They walked slowly, Zaid skipping ahead, pointing at birds, at street vendors, at the big bus that passed by. Amir carried his small backpack and occasionally held his hand when they crossed the street. People stared. A sharply dressed Arab man, a tired woman with braids and worn shoes, and a joyful child between them. But none of them cared. At one point, Zaid stopped in front of a small pet shop window, pressing his hands to the glass. Do you like dogs? Amir asked. Zaid nodded eagerly. Mama says we can't have one because we don't have a house. Amir glanced at Amina. Her lips were pressed tight, but there was something in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or shame. You will, Amir said, not to impress, not to promise what she hadn't asked for, just truthfully. Later that day, Amir gave them space, stepping out to handle a few calls. When he returned, Zaid was napping, and Amina was sitting by the window. He likes you, she said, not looking at him. I like him, Amir replied. She paused. That scares me. He walked toward her slowly. Because you think I'll leave again? Because I know you could, she whispered. Amir crouched beside her chair, his voice low. Then let me prove I won't. She looked at him for a long time, longer than she ever had before. I don't need saving, Amir. I know, he said. You never did. She stared at him, and for the first time, her eyes softened, just slightly. Come back tomorrow, she said. He smiled. I will. And for the first time in years, she smiled too. Not wide, not sure, but just enough to remind him that maybe there was a road back. The next morning, Amir arrived earlier than usual. He brought nothing with him this time, no croissants, no carefully chosen teas, no toys to impress a child. Just himself. He stood at the hallway door of the modest hotel room, heart quietly pounding in his chest. He didn't knock right away. He just listened. Laughter. Zaid's laughter. Small, high-pitched, unfiltered. The kind that catches in your throat if you haven't heard it in too long. Then came Amina's voice, soft and motherly, telling him to finish putting on his shoes. Amir closed his eyes for a second, leaned his head against the wall, and smiled. He knocked. The door opened, and there she was, Amina. Her braids were pulled back today. Her face was freshly washed, and though she wore the same clothes as before, she stood a little taller, stronger. Not because she had changed, but because something around her had. "Morning," he said. She stepped aside to let him in. Zaid was sitting on the bed, trying to tie his shoes, rather poorly. Amir crouched in front of him without thinking. "Want help?" Zaid nodded quickly. "Mama taught me, but I keep messing it up." Amir smiled. "Let's do it together then." He guided the boy's small hands slowly, gently, as Amina watched from across the room. Arms folded, but not defensive this time. Something had shifted between them. Trust. No, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. As Amir finished the second knot, he noticed a small suitcase resting by the hotel door. He looked up at Amina. "You going somewhere?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes, I'm checking out." His chest tightened. "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But I've decided it's time to stop hiding. I'm not going to raise Zaid in the shadows of the past anymore." Amir stood slowly, unsure if he should feel relieved or terrified. "Can I help?" he asked. Amina tilted her head. "You already have. You made me see that we can still ask for more, want more." She walked over to the suitcase, resting her hand on it. "I've lived in fear since the day I found out I was pregnant," she said quietly. "Afraid that you'd hate me, that you'd deny him, that I'd never be able to give him anything more than survival." She looked at Amir, her eyes steady. "But you didn't turn away, and that gave me courage." Amir swallowed the lump in his throat. "I want to do more," he said. "Not just offer hotel rooms and breakfasts. I want to be there, for both of you." Amina looked toward Zaid, who was now crawling onto the bed, hugging a stuffed animal someone at the hotel had given him. "He's already started asking about you," she said. "What your favorite food is, why your clothes look different, if you're rich." Amir chuckled. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you're someone who used to mean a lot to me, and maybe might mean something again." He stepped closer to her, slowly, as if not to scare the fragile moment between them. "I know I can't fix the years we lost. I can't erase what I didn't know. But I can show up now, every day, if you'll let me." Amina looked up at him, her guard flickering just slightly. "Do you have a house?" she asked. Amir raised an eyebrow. "Yes." A quiet one? Yes. She paused. With space for a boy to play? He smiled, his voice softer. With a garden and a swing and a dog that never gets tired of running. Zaid perked up. A dog? Amir turned to him. If your mama says yes. Amina exhaled, something between a laugh and a sigh. I don't want anything handed to me, she said. I need to do this my way. But if there's space for us, for real, I want Zaid to have a chance. There's space, Amir said. There always was. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded toward the suitcase. Then, help me carry this. He did. And as they walked out together, her with her son, him with her suitcase, it was no longer about what they had lost. It was about what they were finally choosing to build. The house was quiet when they arrived. No cameras, no staff, just sunlight spilling through wide windows and the sound of Zaid's small footsteps on tile. Amina stepped inside slowly, her hand still on the strap of her bag, as if unsure she was truly allowed to breathe in a place like this. Zaid ran to the back door where he spotted the garden and the swing. He turned back to Amir with a grin that made time stop. I think he likes it, Amir said softly. Amina didn't speak, but her eyes said enough. She walked past him and stood at the window, watching her son as he ran barefoot through the grass, laughter rising into the air like something sacred. She wrapped her arms around herself and closed her eyes. It doesn't feel real, she whispered. It is, Amir said. And you don't owe anyone an apology for standing in the light. For the first time, she let her head rest on his shoulder, just for a moment. A week passed, then 2. Amina found work at a local library. Zaid enrolled in school. Amir adjusted his world around them, like a man discovering gravity for the first time, not as a weight, but as something anchoring him to the truth. One afternoon, he found a drawing on the kitchen counter. Zaid had scribbled 3 stick figures, one small, one with long braids, and one with a white robe and a smiling face. Above it, he had written one word in crooked, hopeful letters. Family. When Amir showed Amina, she didn't cry. She just reached for his hand, and this time she didn't let go.